Hello, sixth graders. Welcome to sixth grade math, least common multiple lesson. Pause while you write the lesson title in your ISN. Pause again while you write today's lesson objective in your ISN. Today's objective is, I can identify the least common multiple of two whole numbers less than or equal to 100 using various strategies by completing practice problems with 100% accuracy in multiple attempts. The Arizona State standard that we'll be working on today is interpret a context to construct an equivalent expression using the greatest common factor, least common multiple, and the distributive property. Let's take a look at example 1, finding the least common multiple using lists of multiples. Find the least common multiple of 4 and 6. Our directions say we're going to list the multiples of each number. So the first step to doing that is to be careful and recognize the difference between multiples and factors. So remember that factors are what you multiply together to get a product, and multiples are those products. So multiples are products, and a factor times another factor equals a multiple. So when we're looking at multiples of 4, we start with 1 and we say 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16, and so on and so on and so on. And we could keep going to infinity and beyond, but then we would never finish the problem. So that doesn't help us. We have to eventually stop. And the place where we eventually stop is when we get to 4 times the other number that we're thinking about. So when we stop at 4 times 6. Although the book went on to 4 times 9, that's really not necessary. They just did a little bit of extra there. And then you circle the common multiples. So you've got 36 and 24. And then they circled the least common multiple, the one that is in both lists of numbers, but is the lowest number. They circled that in red so that you would see it. So some common multiples of 4 and 6 are 12, 24, and 36. The least of these common multiples is 12. So the least common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12. Another way to find the least common multiple is to use prime factorizations. So sometimes you are asked to find the greatest common factor and the least common multiple of two numbers. So if you use prime factorizations, then it makes it really easy because you've done all of your work for both the greatest common factor and the least common multiple. You just have to know what to do with it. So we're going to go into how to find the least common multiple of 16 and 20. So we make our factor trees and we circle our prime factors. So there's a 2 and a 2 and another 2 and another 2 and a 2 and a 2 and a 5. Those are all our prime factors. And we write the prime factorization of each number and we circle each different factor where it appears the greater number of times. So we have 16 equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And we go, okay, we have a factor of 2. Does it appear in the 16 prime factorization the most? Or does it appear in the 20 prime factorization the most? And it appears in the 16 the most. So we circle all of those, which the book has done for us. And so we circle each one of those. And then we look down below and we see, well, we've also got a factor of 5, and it appears in the prime factorization of 20 the most times. So we're going to circle it there. And then we write down all of our circled numbers. We have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. And even though it seems like that multiplication might be really hard, we already know that 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 equals 16. And then we just need to multiply 16 times 5. And 16 times 5 is 80. So our least common multiple of 16 and 20 is 80. Now this example goes a little bit beyond our standard, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you anyway, just because it sometimes sneaks into problems without us noticing. So it's finding the least common multiple of 3 numbers. Find the least common multiple of 4, 15, and 18. So we write the prime factorization for each number, and we circle each different factor where it appears the greatest number of times. So 2 appears the most often in the 4 prime factorization, so we circle both the 2's. 5 appears the most often in the 15, so we circle the 5. And the 3 appears the most often in the 18 prime factorization, so we circle both the 3's. And then we multiply together all of our circled factors, and we get 180. So the least common multiple of 4, 15, and 18 is 180. Here's a real-life application. A traffic light changes every 30 seconds. Another traffic light changes every 40 seconds. Both lights just changed. After how many minutes will both lights change at the same time again? So when you have a problem like this, it's asking you what is the least number of minutes or the least amount of time or something like that. So hear that word least and think least common multiple of 30 and 40. So we're going to find the least common multiple, and this time the book wants you to list multiples of 30 and 40 and circle the least common multiple. So multiples of 30 are 30, 60, 90, 120, and multiples of 40 are 40, 80, 120, 160, and then you should have heard yourself say 120 twice, so you stop and you circle that. The least common multiple is 120, so both lights will change again after 120 seconds. However, the question asked after how many minutes. So you have to take your seconds and convert them to minutes. Because there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, there are 120 divided by 60 equals 2 minutes in 120 seconds. Both lights will change at the same time again after 2 minutes. Now I am going to show you a little trick for finding the least common multiple. So if you find both the listing method difficult and the prime factorization method difficult, this is a trick that might help you. You are not required to use it, but it's just something else to add to your bag of tricks. So if you have 2 numbers, let's say 8 and 46, and you want to find the LCM, your first step is to find the GCF. So we prime factorize, so 8, 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 2 is 4, and 46, it looks a little scary, but it's an even number, so we know that it's divisible by 2, and 2 goes into 4 twice, and it goes into 6 3 times. And then 23 is a prime number, so it only has 2 numbers. So if we want to find our greatest common factor for those, we know that 8 equals 2 times 2 times 2, and 23 equals 2 times 23. So our greatest common factor is 2. So G, C, equals 2. Now that's not the same as the least common multiple, is it? We were supposed to find the least common multiple. So our second step is we divide either number by the GCF. So we will take 46 and divide it by 2 because that's already done for us up here. So 46 divided by 2 equals 23. And then we're going to take the other number and we are going to multiply the other number by our product that we got. So multiply other number by the product. So we multiply 8 times 23. So this looks a little scary, but 8 times 2 is 16, so 8 times 20 is 160, plus 8 times 3 is 24, so that equals 184. So that's how you can do some of that sticky math in your head. So that equals our least common multiple. So our least common multiple for 8 and 46 is 184. Be sure you write these steps and this example down in your notes, even if you don't think it's going to be something that you'll use, because you might find that it is helpful to you later. Before you're finished, you need to be sure your notes in your interactive student notebook are complete and that you have completed your Google form questions. And remember to rewatch the lesson if you need to and complete your Big Ideas math assignment in your Math Spiral notebook. Submit that assignment when it is 100% correct, not before, and track your progress on your playlist.